This interview this morning is with Nancy Weems of Fairhope, Alabama, about her father, William Cheatham, a veteran of the United States Army who achieved the rank of colonel in a 23-year military career. The interview is being conducted on June 28, 2011 in Fairhope, Alabama for the Veterans History Project in the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. Conducting the interview is Jeanne Robinson, friend and neighbor of Nancy Weems. Nancy, let's begin with a few biographical details about your father, his date of birth, place of birth, education, and so forth.
Okay. He was born in 1913 in Abbeville, South Carolina, which a lot of people haven't heard of, but it's a wonderful place. He went to Clemson College. At that time, it was a military college. And graduated in 1936 and didn't go right into the Army, worked for the Southern Oil Company for a year, and I think that was because of his father, who was with the Southern Oil Company. But later went into the Army, especially as they were entering World War II. And had various assignments, anything, I always just say, they threw everything at him. But he was chief of the Separation Center at Camp Shelby in Laurel, Mississippi. And then he went to Louisiana to do the same thing there at a camp there. Then he had various assignments throughout the South primarily. I used to kid him about that. You know, why did we only go to the South? But that's just, he was with the Adjutant General's office, and that was their administrative offices. So then he was sent to Bremerhaven, Germany, and we all accompanied him to that assignment. And that was wonderful. Not that I loved living in the South, but I loved getting to another place. Then we came back, and he was with the Pentagon for 3 years, and then was transferred to Seoul, Korea. And that was something I'll probably talk about a little bit later, where he became very ill in Seoul and came back, and his career pretty much ended with the Army. So see, you shouldn't ask me questions that are long like that.
Well, let's back up a little bit then. And you're the oldest child, if I remember correctly, from the
oldest
earlier
of 4.
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And you lived primarily in Arlington, Virginia, while your father
yes,
was
in the Army they
career.
always say the longest place you live is home, even though we lived in many, many places, but we lived in Arlington the longest because we would stay there when he had what we called hardship tours.
Yes.
So,
okay. His tour in Korea, how long was that?
18 months, and that was the longest he had ever been away from the family. So it was very, very difficult and very challenging for him and for us.
What was his position?
He was a colonel.
And do you recall what his responsibilities were in Korea?
He was attached to the Adjutant General's office, which is an administrative service, so we used to call him the pencil pusher, because that's what he pretty much did throughout his whole career. He started out in infantry and wound up in the Adjutant General's office.
You've referred to those unaccompanied tours as hardship tours, and that was a long time when he was in Korea. 18 months is a long time. What are your reflections on the impact on your family of being stateside while he was away and dealing with the day-to-day rigors of life without him?
Well, that's one reason I think this project is so wonderful and illuminating, because people don't understand, unless they're in the service, how challenging an assignment, a hardship assignment, can be on the family. It was very difficult for us. One, I mentioned to Jeanne yesterday, my mother did not drive. So we walked everywhere, which was great in a way because we're all very healthy. All the kids were very healthy, but it was very difficult for my mother. Even if she had driven, I don't know if she would have been comfortable, because she just had never driven, and that was one thing nobody took into consideration. I'm leaving, but oh, by the way, Yeah, but we had a lot of friends who helped, and that it all worked out. But that was a challenge for my mother. Plus, she didn't really know how to handle finances. Back then, it was a little different than it is now. It was a lot different, and she never had been told how to handle checkbooks and how to handle any of the finances. But it was a great experience for her to learn all this.
Let's put this into historical context. What years
This
are we
was
talking about?
he left in 1955. So in the 50s, things were very different.
Yes.
Very different. You wouldn't have that happen today, I doubt. So that was a challenge. Plus Christmas, Thanksgiving, all the holidays were not as fun as they usually were. And that made my mother very sad. And it was just kind of made us sad too, because she was so sad. But as time went on, we all got better and stronger, and we received numerous letters from my dad, and that always helped. I think my mother wrote one every day, and she got one every day. So
Did you have any opportunities to speak on the telephone?
no, we did not. We did not. I don't know if that was not technologically available at that time. I don't think it was, to be honest with you. But letters, yes. And of course, no computer, no emails, but wonderful letters, which I still have. And my parents wrote love letters to each other. I mean, it's not just, the kids are fine, but I love you. It was just, detailed accounts of kind of what he was doing, and of course what she was doing. Nancy is failing chemistry, and Luke did this, and things that he would want to hear about the children, and good things about the children. But for the most part, they wrote love letters, and that was one thing I found throughout all of the information that I've been going through to get ready for this interview. My mother left a scrapbook with all this information, but the letters are beautiful.
That had to have been sustaining for your
Yeah.
family
Mhm.
to receive those letters.
It really was. It really was. So I feel so much pain for the veterans' wives now who are going through the same thing that we went through. Only I think it's longer, for longer periods sometimes. And just many, turn around, come home for a couple of months, and then you're back over into a war zone. And I have such compassion for those women and the children that are left behind, because it's just so difficult. The structure is gone. The military people tend to have a lot of structure, and we're going to have dinner at 6, and we're going to do this, we're going to go to the ice creams. They just have structure, and that's missing when they're not there, and everyone feels it in the family.
Were there any support mechanisms available to you at that time?
Yes.
In the
Well,
United
that was
States
kind of,
Army?
now I think they have that. I'm told that there is more support, but back in the 50s, we had support from friends and friends of my dad's that he had worked with, who would come over and help my mother with the finances and, writing checks and paying bills, and anything that we needed, we could call on people. But as far as the Army providing a service, which I think they do now, that was not available back in the 50s, to my knowledge.
Did you live in military housing, or were you
No,
on
we
the
lived
economy?
in the community, in the civilian community. So, and that was wonderful, because we had, such great neighbors. But most of our neighbors were not in the military. So it was kind of unusual. For example, when we would have an assignment, I would have to leave sometimes before the exams were given, because Army says we got to go. So we went. And it was hard for people to understand that if they weren't in the military. But I grew up in the military, and I loved it. I loved it. I think more kids should have that experience of traveling all to different places and meeting different people, and just being in different circumstances and not just the same place. all the time.
Did other members of your family go into the military?
Yes, my brother. I had 2 brothers and a sister, and my brother, who's a little younger than I am, was in the Vietnam War. So there's a feeling when you're in the military. Many families do this. The children, some of the children, go into the service. Maybe not the same service, but a service. In fact, I remember my brother saying, "I want to be a Marine," and my father looked at him like, well, "Could you even think that, you know? There's nothing better than the Army." But I think he felt like that was something he wanted to do, to serve his country. So I was proud of him, very proud of him.
While in Korea, your father became ill.
Yes. He contracted a virus and became ill, and I don't know if that's why they sent him home, but he stayed the full 18 months, so I don't know how long he was ill over there. But when he came home to us, he was ill, and I remember just symptoms, and immediately we were transferred to Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana. And so we didn't really, I don't think anybody stopped to think we should have to have looked at or anything, because we had to go. So we went, got there, and he really became ill. Went to the dispensary at Fort Benjamin, and they sent him right to Walter Reed Army Hospital, and he was in hospital for 10 years, the last years of his life, because this virus, nobody knew it. It was, the symptoms. He was in an ICU for ages, learning how to walk and almost talk over again. So those years were the hardest on our family, harder than his being away.
Did the family then transfer back to
Yes.
Arlington at that point?
Yes. We were only in Indianapolis for 3 months because, he was so ill, and of course my mother needed to be with him, so she got us found a house for us, and we all moved back. And it was kind of sad and ironic for me, because we had moved right when I was becoming a senior in high school. And as everybody knows, you don't want to miss your high school years. You just think that's the most horrible thing that could happen to you if you don't get to graduate with your class. But I did, because of his illness, and I felt so guilty. When you're 17, you just think you cause everything. and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm back, I get to go to high school, but my dad's sick. So that was challenging.
What are your recollections about the care that he received at
Oh,
Walter
just
Reed?
wonderful, wonderful. Walter Reed is just amazing. And he was there for so long that we all felt like family. And but he was able to come home. He would in out, just depending on his symptoms. And the longer he lived, the more he could be out of Walter Reed. So, that was wonderful. But when someone is very ill, it impacts the whole family so much, and everyone in the family. And it really, my mother was the hardest hit, of course, because she knew he wasn't going to recover. So he died at the age of 54, and of pneumonia, because when you're just lying in a hospital bed, you don't get to move. And was buried with a wonderful military funeral, and buried in Arlington Cemetery. So it was a beautiful ending to a beautiful life.
You've expressed your empathy that you feel toward today's military spouses and their
Right.
families.
Mm-hmm.
And no doubt that stems from your own
Yes.
experiences as an Army junior growing up. Can you tell us more about how those experiences shape your feelings and your interest in today's armed services members and veterans and their families.
Right. Well, as I said earlier, I don't believe the average citizen understands what goes on in a military family and how much being away from home impacts that family and how devastating it can be for children to grow up with father leaving, father coming home, father leaving, or mother. Nowadays, it's mother and father leaving. I don't think we do enough for our veterans. I think more is being done as more awareness is available, but I really think there just needs to be so much. For example, I'm big on Memorial Day celebrations, and you know, for a while people weren't that interested in Memorial Day. I mean, they used to back in the, 40s, 50s. Boy, they used to really celebrate it. But then it got to an era where, it's Memorial Day. Well, this year I felt for the first time in a long time, wow, people are really celebrating Memorial Day and honoring the veterans and trying to understand what their life is like. So we went to the memorial service at the American Legion. And I was so happy to see a number of people, not just one or two people who take the flag up and down, but a number of people. And there are parades in so many of the cities around. I think there was one in Gulf Shores and one in Orange Beach, and that made me feel so great that finally I think people are starting to think, oh my gosh, these are our veterans, let's help them. You know, the big yellow bows that you see on people's doors, those are sold, I think they're $10 a bow. And the money that goes to those bows that they receive goes to help families of veterans, families that need some assistance, need whatever it is. That money goes to them. That made me feel, wow, there is some awareness, and there is a trend to doing more with the veterans. There's even more veterans hospitals. There's a wonderful one in Pensacola. So I see that things are getting better, but we still have a long way to go. When I heard about this project, I was so elated because, oh my gosh, Fairhope is creating awareness, for the veterans, not just present day, but from all the different wars. And a lot of people don't even really know what all happened. So that was a real wonderful revelation for me. So I was happy to be here to share it.
Well, you've been an eloquent voice, not only in regard to your father's story, but for our service members' families who are at home and in support of their spouses. And we thank you, Nancy.
Well, I thank you. Cry. You did so good to me.